All right, a little bit more drama developing around Hillary Clinton, these emails and everything else. A key Hillary Clinton aide, Cheryl Mills, walking out of an FBI interview after being asked what she considered questions that were off limits to Judge Andrew Napolitano. Do we know what those questions were? Because one side deemed them off limits, the other not so much.
We do know what the questions were, Neil, and good afternoon. It's always good to be with you, my friend. When the FBI invites you in for an interview, you can actually negotiate with them about what you're going to say, because you have the right not to answer and you have the right to leave whenever you want. Apparently, Cheryl Mills' lawyers persuaded the Justice Department that when Cheryl Mills, worked for Mrs. Clinton at the State Department, she was Mrs. Clinton's lawyer, and therefore what they discussed was protected by the attorney-client privilege. And the Justice Department agreed they wouldn't ask her what she said to Mrs. Clinton or Mrs. Clinton said to her about anything. One of the courageous FBI agents who thought that agreement was full of baloney decided he would ask her on his own in the presence of everybody else, did you talk to Mrs. Clinton about this email setup? When Cheryl Mills and her lawyer heard that, they got up and left for a couple of minutes. They didn't throw anything. They didn't storm out. They just said, excuse us, we'll be back in a few minutes. And when they came back, the FBI agent agreed he wouldn't ask what was outside the agreement. But yet we all learned about it the next day. How did we learn about it? Neil, don't burn the FBI if you expect a secret to be kept.
Where is all this going, Judge? I can't even keep up with it. I know you've been following every nook and crevice and turn. Where do you think this is going? I
think that the bad news for Mrs. Clinton keeps cascading upon her. I think the public record, the evidence in the public record, Neil, is not only enough to indict her for espionage, but to convict her for espionage. There's no question that the FBI has built a very strong case against her, and that's just from the public record. They presumably have more that they know about that they haven't revealed to those of us who follow it. The question now is one of will. Does the Justice Department have the will to present this to a grand jury? If it does, she will be indicted for espionage. If it doesn't, expect leaks, just like the leak that told us about Cheryl Mills and her lawyer leaving the interrogation room. And those leaks could have the same effect on Mrs. Clinton's political future as an indictment would, which would be highly negative.
All right, so the way it goes, Judge, is the FBI would then decide, after weighing all of this, we recommend, taking action. The Justice Department then has to weigh that recommendation, right?
Yes.
Now, if the Justice Department says, no, we don't see the need, I would imagine Director Comey and some of his other colleagues would be very upset by that.
Director Comey is a straight shooter, Neil, an apolitical person. He once threatened to resign in the Bush administration because he felt that the president wanted him to do something that at the time was unconstitutional, and the president backed down. Director Comey is such a straight shooter. If he personally recommends indictment and his bosses in the Justice Department say no, look not only for him to resign, but for him to lead others in resignations as well. Look for the evidence against her that we don't know about to be leaked. Look for a sample indictment to be leaked. The president could be facing a Saturday Night Massacre Watergate-like affair on his hands in the last 6 months of his presidency if he does not let this go to a grand jury.
That is assuming, of course, that Comey and his people looking into this will recommend such action. Is there any possibility they don't?
It's possible, but I think it's unlikely. And here's why. The team that is investigating Mrs. Clinton is the same team that investigated and prosecuted General Petraeus. The evidence against Mrs. Clinton is exponentially more than the evidence against General Petraeus. Whatever you think of the general, I happen to like him personally. I believe he's a great figure in American history. The perception in the FBI is he got off with a slap on the wrist. They do not want that to happen again.
Judge, thank you very, very much. It was good catching up. To the judges.